Hello.
Good evening, Dave. This is Michael Vera with Late Night in the Midlands. How are you?
Good evening, Michael. I'm fantastic. How are you?
I am doing just fine, and it's great to talk to you tonight. And I do thank you so much for taking time out to be with us.
Oh, no, that's my pleasure, for sure.
All right. Well, we've got an interesting topic here tonight, and I have been all over the Planet X News website. And I tell you, I find a lot of interesting stuff there. I'm going to be spending a little more time there. It's full of goodies. So I thought maybe we'd start out with a little bit of background and what I mean. Most people probably don't believe when they hear about something like this. So, what got you going down this Planet X trail?
Well, I'll tell you the story. I work in the nuclear business, and I was up at a nuclear plant working, and there was a colleague of mine that mentioned the fact about this Planet X. And I've always been interested in, science and the stars and UFOs and all that sort of stuff. So it kind of tweaked my interest, but I really didn't pay a lot of attention to it in the beginning. And then one day I thought, oh, well, I'll check it out on the web and stuff. And I went around, there was lots of information on this Planet X. And when I got to Planet X News, I kind of liked that site. And I started to read the stuff. And I'll be honest with you, Michael, I was a skeptic. I did not believe that there could be this rogue planet with a bunch of others with it coming into our solar system. And I just didn't believe it. It took me, I think, it still got my curiosity though, and I think it took me 2 years before I'd even believe it. That's how long it took me for researching this stuff, listening to people, find out who was credible, who was not. It took at least that long to find out, who was credible and who was giving out some good information that I could believe.
Right, and that's the key. Who's credible? That's been my experience. I've been doing this for 8.5 years, and I have had several guests on about Planet X. Some of them have now retired and they're not around no more, but a good majority of them, I don't have back on because I've found where they have been. They're just in it to fill their pockets, and they're taking advantage of people. And
you know what? And I agree with you 100%. And when I started to write my articles, and I got started with Planet X News because I was retired, but since gone back to work because of Planet X actually, and I'll explain that a little bit later. But when Planet X News was advertising for writers, I thought maybe I could write, one or two. And I contacted, Brad, and I said, I might be able to write one or two. He said, okay. He said, that's fine. So it started off as a guest writer. And, when I started to write, I couldn't stop. I was probably writing 2 to 3 articles a week.
Nice.
And if you look in the archives of the stuff that I've written, you'll see that if you can find the dates on them, you'll probably see that that's quite true. But the information that I gathered was incredible. But we know what I wanted to do was, I'm just an ordinary fellow, and I know there's a lot of people out there like myself. They don't have a degree in science. They're not astronomers. They know very little about that stuff at all. But I think they know that they've been lied to or being lied to. And what I wanted to do was sort of, hope they don't object, but try to represent them as an ordinary citizen, so to speak, to try and gather all the information I can and put it on that website.
And I appreciate that, and that's what I want really, and that's what I set out looking for when I sent out an email.
Yeah.
And got you here is I was looking for. First off, I wanted somebody everybody hasn't plastered all over the place, already, and I don't know honestly. I mean, until I found you, I find that you've been in this and you've been doing this a while, but you and I haven't crossed paths yet. So that was important, and also important as to how serious you take it. And I'm taking it that you take it pretty serious.
Well, you know what? I'll be honest with you. It is scary, and the people that I've spoken to, and I've spoken now to quite a few people throughout the world, and it really affects their families, them and their families. I was astonished that just how much it does affect people. It affects their marriage, their relationships, all this sort of stuff. Because you have one partner that really believes and wants to prep and protect his family, and then you have maybe the wife, not all in every case, but maybe the wife that thinks the husband's going absolutely crazy.
Yeah. I know of a few people like that where they split up because they couldn't agree.
Yeah, and I mean, my wife, God bless her, she doesn't object to me doing this. She supports me in a certain way, but I think she's like most people. They don't really don't want to believe that it's true, and I think there's a lot of people out there that think the same way. This couldn't possibly happen. We've got nice blue skies and all this sort of stuff, but when I looked at all the evidence of the changes, not only on our planet, but all the other planets in our solar system, I mean, that's a matter of record with NASA, the weather on Venus and all these other planets has gone absolutely haywire. And that just doesn't happen. Something has to cause that to happen.
Yeah, and there's always excuses for this stuff. I mean, I've had some say, "Oh, well, that didn't really happen. People are making that up." But I know for a fact that these other planets have been affected temperature-wise.
Oh, yeah, they have actually violent storms on these planets now, which they never had before. And the rings of Saturn I guess some of the rings have disappeared, and all sorts of stuff is going on. And I think the increase, too, in meteors, even though NASA said, oh, we can track those, they certainly missed the one coming over Russia, and the excuse was it came out from the sun. But, I mean, there's been one, I think, in Iraq that really wasn't publicized, and there's been several others, too. And the increase has been absolutely dramatic.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Yeah, the same with earthquakes. I started to monitor the earthquakes and also sinkholes, as well as extreme weathers like floods. I mean, this is unprecedented, the things that are going on.
And David, if I may, you mentioned earthquakes, and I got to say, I've had Dr. Rand, who is on this, he does a show here, and Peter Kling, they do a show together. Them two have been talking about the earthquakes, and I knew that it picked up, right? But I didn't know. I finally listened to them guys, and I went ahead and I signed up at the USGS website and started getting these earthquakes sent to me. And I want everything that's 5 or more. And I tell you what, in the last week I've had, I think, 4 or 5 that were well over 6 that have come to me. I mean, that's a lot.
I know. And I watched the program when I first started to investigate this. Do you remember the program with Jesse Ventura, Conspiracy Theories?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
I watched that, and I found that extremely interesting. And they brought up the thing about the underground bunkers that the U.S. had built. And when I realized and dug in deeper and find out more about them and discovered they built over 130 of them, mainly, I think they're all actually sort of inland, away from the coast, and they're all interconnected by highway 1.5 miles down. And I'm thinking, well, why would they? I mean, if you want to have a nuclear shelter, why would you want to connect them, sort of by road? So there must be another alternative reason for the road. And I think it's a great way to disperse and transport, troops without anybody's knowledge.
That makes sense to me. And yeah, I know I've seen photos, and I'm not somebody who takes every photograph to be. For me, I've got to trust who I'm getting it from and know that they didn't Photoshop or what have you. And I've seen pictures of what seems to be farms underneath the ground, where they've literally got farms, artificial sunlight down there that they're growing stuff with. I've seen the roads, almost like stores built down there. It's insane what they have.
well, exactly. And I mean, that, I believe, when you go back to 9/11, just before 9/11, I believe that the military was hauled up in front of Congress and asked, how come they're missing $41 trillion out of the budget? Where did that money go? And then 9/11 hit, and it all got swept under the rug. Well, I think I know where the $41 trillion went. I think it's building all those underground bunkers for the elite.
Yeah, yeah, and when we say bunkers, I mean people are probably picturing these small little
Yes.
survival bunkers. I don't know. We're talking about. I mean, they've got literally cities under the ground.
Yeah, well, they had those moles that they used, which are about 60 feet in diameter, that actually bore through the earth, and they bore through the earth quite quickly. And some of them, from my understanding, I could be wrong, but some of them were actually nuclear driven.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt that. Now, I've always thought this is what would be a good explanation for, people report hearing these rumbling sounds. I mean, what are these sounds? They say it sounds like trumpets playing or something.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's probably what they were hearing, and these tremors that they'd get. Probably these bore machines underneath the ground.
Well, that could well be. And the fact that, on that program that Jesse did was, they discovered they had acres and acres of these 3-tier coffins out in the open. And, Jesse's obviously, was asking, well, what are they for? And as soon as he had that on TV, they all disappeared. They got removed.
Yeah,
So,
that's
I
right.
mean, if you've got a good explanation for them, why would you move them so quickly? So I found that very suspicious, and I'm finding a lot of things extremely suspicious.
Yeah, well, see, I agree with you, and this is why I cover this topic, and I've covered this topic since the day I got into radio, because I remember back in 1983, in my science class, a science magazine, little paperback thing that they'd hand out once a week, and it was from NASA, and I remember opening that, and it talked about Planet X, discovering Planet X, and how they some satellite had gone out of orbit. I think it was a Russian satellite. They said kind of went off course a bit, and it caught this thing they said it just came into the solar system just enough where they were able to get pictures of it, and they made it sound like, hey, it could be Earth-like, might be trees and this. And so I remember being excited about it, but I didn't know what it would turn into later. Later down the line, I start hearing about it, and it rings bells, and I say, hey, I heard about that Planet X. But now it's not, well, hey, there might be other people there. It's more, it's coming and it's going to destroy and destruct, and that it's done it before. And so, I've seen enough evidence to say it's worth not closing the door on. That's for sure.
Well, and I agree 100%. And one thing I did notice, and I did write that in the article and ask other people if they could notice too, is like I was always very interested in UFOs as a kid.
Yeah, me
and
too.
aliens, and I think this is going to tell my age, but I used to watch that thing called Flash Gordon. I don't know how old you are, but
I remember it, but I'm not quite that old. But I've always been into the older stuff. I'm going to be 45 in August, so.
Oh no, you're just young. But I watched this, and I'd be glued to the TV, and the special effects when I saw it like not so long ago, and I saw some of the clips and some of the special effects were so funny, but sparklers for the engine, and but I always used to watch the moon, look at the moon, and I don't know about you, but when you look at the moon, it always seems to have sort of a man's face in it.
Yeah.
And so I've studied the moon a little bit, and there is a very large crater on the moon called Tycho. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with that or not, but Tycho is one of the larger craters, which is visible with a pair of binoculars. And what surprised me was that I was looking at the moon one day, and I thought, it doesn't look right. So I got the binoculars out, and Tycho normally sits at the 5 o'clock position. That's how I remember the moon, the man in the face. It's just a little cockeyed, but it's there. And it had moved 90 degrees. And to the 8 o'clock position, I'm thinking, how can that be? Because there's no engine on the moon for it to make it move. It's not rotating, it's stationary. It's supposed to be there, solid, that's it, not move. But I've watched it move both ways, 90 degrees at times. You get a full moon and watch that, I think you might be surprised that you might be able to see that. And one of the things that really convinced me there was something going on out there. So obviously I started to dig deeper and deeper and find out more information. And again, it's from the people I think that are credible. And I've actually contacted one person. I'm not going to mention names because I don't want to, single people out. But I've contacted one person who is quite well known, and I asked him a question and stuff like that, and the reply I got was not really what I expected. Let's put it that way. I'm more or less wasting his time. So, that disappointed me too, because people want to know things. And if we can't get that message out in an honest fashion and give them the information, because I have conversations with people and I try and blurt out in 15, 20 minutes, what I've learned.
Right.
But I've learned this. You cannot convince people in 20 minutes what took me 2 years to be convinced of. All you can do is make them aware, and then they're going to have to find out for themselves.
That's right. My kids will sometimes, they're older, they're teenagers, but they'll sometimes come to me and ask me, Dad, what do you really think about this? And I mean, do you think it's BS or is it? And, I tell them, I say, well, do I think that you need to worry about it? No. Because, do I think that it's out there? I think that there's something's real to this whole thing, because there's been enough that's come up with it, through the years with this whole. So I tell them that, I think there's something out there somewhere, but nobody has been able to show me exactly where it is and exactly how long till it gets here. And until they do that, I'm not going to sweat it. So I try not to scare them with things like this and just tell them, hey, more or less find it interesting, research it yourself. I mean, see what you find and come to your own determinations on it. But, okay, let me ask you this. Now, of the years that you've been researching this and you've looked into it, do you have an idea of maybe where it is or how long? And I know it's hard to give dates on these things, and I'm not asking you to do that, but I guess I'm asking, what have you learned about it?
Well, I've learned that, that I think is closer than what we really believe. And I think that NASA and all the governments of the world know exactly when it's going to come, right down to the minute. They're not going to divulge that information. They want to keep us, gainfully employed and paying taxes and right up until the end. And because they don't want to create chaos or panic. Because let's face it, if we said yes, it's going to be next year in, say, June, just for example, you imagine what it's going to be like for people. People would not go to work. There'll be people, pillaging stuff. It'd be absolute chaos on the planet.
Well, yeah. I mean, think about it.
That's why they don't say anything.
Yeah, I mean, you get something like that. I mean, if they tell you, I mean, that's just like, I guess it's kind of similar to, them telling you, hey, you got 8 months to live. I mean, okay, well, why am I going to go crazy paying for this or paying for that? And in this case, people are going to, if it was me, I mean, I'd be more quick to sell what I got and try to use that money for survival purposes. But
yeah, well, that's why I went back to work, because I was driving an ordinary car. I went back to work because I know that there's a possibility I might have to bug out, so I bought a truck. So that's why I went back to work and started. I've got a room in my house that I call the war room. And that's where I accumulate a lot of things that I would need. And one of the things I did do was, because I believe that, when the time gets closer, there won't be an internet, and you won't be able to, just look something up, how convenient it is right now if you go on Google, and you can find out just about anything on Google. So what I did was, I decided to make hard copies and buy the books of everything that I need to do, whether it's gardening, growing vegetables, or right to, being out in the woods and surviving. And I recommended that with some of the articles that I put out there. I gave a list of things that really you should have, and I've been accumulating those slowly, because the everyday guy doesn't have thousands of dollars to go out and get all the equipment that he wants.
Right. Right.
So, obviously they have a budget, and, most people are living paycheck to paycheck. There's not a lot left over because, we pay a lot of taxes. So, I think it's important, to lead up to what you need to be. You need to set a goal of what you need and kind of work backwards from, from there and figure out how much per week you need. But, you did ask the question about when do I think it's coming. I have no concrete evidence to tell me that. Now, I've listened to some. There was a guy by the name of David Mead who's made a prediction of September, October 2017. And I'm sort of using that as my milestone, let's put it that way, that I will be, get everything that I possibly need, that I need by that time. So that's, if some people want just sort of a guideline, that's what I'm using. But please don't think that I'm saying that's going to be the actual date, because, like you say, Michael, you can't.
Well, that's right. And before we even get into things that people could do to prepare for something like this, I wonder, what can somebody do? I mean, to prepare for something like this, wouldn't you have to know, at least you'd have to be pretty close and accurate as to what's going to happen when it comes by. And so I guess that'd be a good place to go, and that is, how close will it come to Earth based on what you've researched? And what are we expecting? Because I'm thinking, if something like this is happening, it's going to happen, it's going to come close enough to disturb the Earth in a way that I don't think anybody's ever seen or felt or experienced before. And I got to wonder, would you really know where a safe place was, rather than you'd have to be kind of lucky to be in a place where you could survive with something like this? Because it would, I would think that all the plates and stuff would be, dancing around.
Well, they're going to be yanked, and then it'd be like I'm going to put it'd be almost like a mousetrap going off, because the plates are going to get pulled and slammed back down again, and they reckon it's going to change the shape of the continents. And I know that the tail of the wings, if you want to call it, of Planet X, are very, very long, and it's going to pass through that not only once but twice, because when this planet and its system passes through ours and goes around the sun and then back out again, we're going to go through the tail of that the first time, and then about 130 days, I believe it is, that we'll go through it the second time. And it depends on which side of Earth is facing that tail. Will take the brunt of the debris that's going to be in that tail, and it's millions of miles long. So if you ever watch that movie 2012, where you see it's raining those sort of bus-sized meteors coming down on fire, I imagine it to be something like that. And that's what they reckon knocked out the dinosaurs. And that's what happened with the Great Flood, because of the Earth got actually flipped, like turned. And I believe that the Earth travels at about 1,600 kilometers, about 1,000 miles an hour at the equator. Then when the planet comes through, it's going to slowly stop the planet, and then you've got the amount of water that it's going to move, because at the equator, the height of the water is a lot higher. I'm sure you're aware of that. It's about 500 feet higher at the equator than anywhere else on the planet. So that 500 feet of water is going to go somewhere. So you can imagine when it comes into the coastal regions, obviously, the seabed slopes up to the land. So that 500 feet is going to amount to miles high by the time it hits the coast.
And it's my understanding that even our sky, our atmosphere, holds about enough water to cover the whole entire planet with like an inch or two. I mean, that's a lot of water too.
Yeah. Well, it is. And the research that I've done is like, you'll take, a lot of Europe will be underwater, Great Britain will be gone completely. I think Japan will be gone, and parts of Australia, and so on and so forth. And in the west coast of the United States. So it's like, to think about that happening it's something like a science fiction movie, and it's like hard to comprehend. I mean, it's like me asking you, what's at the end of space? Well, more space, you don't know, right? You don't know what's at the end, or if there is an end. So it's hard to comprehend, and I think this is like that for people that, it's hard for them to believe that could happen, especially when they wake up on a Sunday morning, sit out on the patios and having a nice cup of coffee, sun shining, it's a beautiful day, birds are singing. You can't imagine all that, changing.
Right. But, I think what's even more so is that most people can't imagine their government not telling them about it.
Well, yeah, that's the truth as well.
That's the part that's hard to get them, because they go, oh, come on, NASA would tell us, or our government would tell you. They get angry when you tell them that they're being lied to, some of them.
I know. And when I write some stories, and sometimes I get some reactions about that too, and I sometimes wonder whether they like, I don't know whether you heard the term, government trolls.
Oh, yeah.
But the sort of paid individuals that try to discourage you from writing stuff. And I get a few of those too. And, and I tell them, I say, I must have hit a nerve, and, it just makes me more determined to write more. And which it does. I want to know the truth. Me as an individual, and I'm sure there's lots of people out there do as well. I mean, I get laughed at and ridiculed, and I'm quite used to that, and I'm okay with that. People have their rights to their opinion, and so be it. But I mean, I took up my gun license. I got those for a particular reason.
Good.
I go target shooting, but I know that I wrote a story on what it's going to be like in the aftermath, and it's not a pretty story, but it explains a lot of things that you have to think about in the aftermath of, especially when you have no food, no water. What do you do?
And you got millions of other people who might be walking around looking to take what you got.
Well, yeah, I know. I had somebody say to me, "Oh, it's no problem. I got a hunt. I'll just go out and shoot some deer." I said, "Then you got to consider there's going to be probably thousands of other people watching you shoot that deer and want to take it." So it's like, it's not as simple or as glorious as it sounds. It's going to be one of the most ugliest things ever, and it scares me to death.
Yeah, it is scary when you think about it. And if you want small examples, I say this often to my listeners, if you want small examples of what it'll be like, look at Baltimore, what happened there with just a court ruling. Look at what goes on Black Friday when people go to get their special deals at the stores. They'll stop grandma in aisle 5 to save $100 on that TV.
Well, look what happened to that poor guy at Walmart that opened the doors.
Oh, I know.
He got trampled to death.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the thing is, what you got to look at Hurricane Katrina. What happened then?
Well, yeah, and that's another fine example too. I mean, even the cops were going in and taking people's weapons. I mean, there was a grandmother who got beat up in her kitchen because she wouldn't give up her gun.
I know. I know. It's so. I mean, and that gets us to another point about martial law, because there's been a lot of talk on the net about a couple of the states that they want to take the guns away from. One of them being Texas, and good luck with that one.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's. I know that Jade Helm came and went, and there's a lot of hype about Jade Helm. And yeah, I think you're familiar with the Jade Helm.
Very familiar, yes.
Yeah, and you kind of wonder, that was a big exercise. And then I looked at all the Walmarts who've got fencing around them now, and just kind of wonder what they for.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of talk about that too with the Walmarts. Now, here's what hurts these things: is you get people who want to be YouTube sensations, and they'll go to a regular Walmart and they'll find a military Jeep, and they'll go take a video of it, knowing darn well that the Walmart's open and that people are in it, and they make up stories. They lie, they try to fearmonger to get the highest hits.
Yes, I know, and I see that, and I recognize that too. You're absolutely right, 100%. And I wrote about that too. I was really annoyed that people do that, for the sensationalism. I'm not in it for that at all. And it's funny because when I started my new job, when I got there, there's a couple of people sort of went, "I know you." And it was kind of funny in a way, because I'm not used to being sort of recognized when I don't know people, and I kind of had to chuckle to myself a little bit, and I wrote about that in an article too, and I got a real bad comment back saying, get over yourself, so to speak, but they misunderstood what I was trying to get across. It was for me, it was kind of nice that people had read my stuff, and I was getting the message out, and I felt great about that part.
Right.
And but as regards to feeling like a movie star, no, that's not my intent. All I want to do is get the message out, and hopefully I can help people. I believe that I've helped some with their relationships, hopefully with the articles on how to get over, sort of how to lead the double life, which is very hard to do.
Right.
Because because I'm living that now. I mean, I have to make plans with my wife to do this, to the other things, the regular things that you plan for in life. But then Triple D comes up and has to say, okay, now what have I got to buy to prepare for, what's coming? So then that's stressful.
It is stressful. Now, here's the biggest worry of mine. If I was going to have a worry for the aftermath of a Planet X coming through, okay, if the people are not scary enough and those kinds of things, and of course the floods and the meteor rocks and all that stuff, how about, now you work in one, so you might have thought of this, but how about the nuclear power plants? How do you survive that?
You don't. Well, that is the problem. And see, when you have spent fuel, the spent fuel then is transported into a pool, an Olympic-sized pool, where it's kept cool. Once there's no hydro, no pumps, and the water's not circulating and they're not filling the pools, then what you're going to get is like a bunch of Fukushimas.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to get. And the radiation area will be quite large. And, you're going to have a meltdown in every one of them. And unless you can neutralize them, but nobody knows how to on this planet, then we're in big trouble. I mean, like you take that fiasco with Fukushima right now, the amount of plutonium and pollution going into that water is unreal, and the damage that it's done is irreparable. Because I think it's got a half-life of 100,000 years or 50,000 years or something. I can't remember the exact number, but it's like a long time. So the effects of that's going to be felt for a long, long time.
And now imagine over 100 of those things going down. I mean, the whole planet would be worthless. Those people who are in the ground, hiding out in the ground, they'd have to stay there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that would be there, too.
That would be there, too.
They'd live and die there, yeah.
Yeah.
I know. So, you kind of wonder, like, do you want to take me out real quick? Or,
Do you think that they plan on sending some people to Mars and all that? Do you think that this is, I kind of, in the back of my mind, I think, oh boy, what a perfect way of getting the elite off the planet, when they know something's going to happen. I mean, you know what I'm talking about, where they're vetting these people to do a reality type show and a one-way ticket to Mars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I don't think they're ready to do that as yet. And I think Planet X will be here long before those plans will fall into effect. I think they're running scared, to be honest with you.
Well, as well they should be. They're probably more afraid of lawlessness than they are of even the planet.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, because just think, at that point, if you run into Hillary Clinton, you got nothing to lose, right?
No, just have Donald Trump go and meet with her.
Yeah, there you go.
That would work out pretty good.
Yeah.
But I know that people what I try to write is to stimulate people's minds on how it would be and the best way to to watch for and things to watch for. You just take regular house pets, for example. If the people are starving to death, so are the animals, and then if the animals are out, they're gonna run in packs.
Yeah.
And if you're out hunting for a little rabbit or something, you could end up being lunch.
Oh, yeah, that's very true. We've even here in the South, there's been times when there's been warnings of these dog packs, and this is civilized civilization. Wait till things break down. You're gonna have little chihuahuas that are gonna be, hawking you down.
Instead of the pit bulls.
Yeah.
But those sort of things. I feel what's going to happen. Like, what will they do? Let's say when this comes by, there's no electricity. What are they going to do with people that are incarcerated? What are they going to do with the people that are in insane asylums? What are they going to do with these people?
That's a good question. I would imagine the people in the prisons are probably going to wind up dying there. They're probably going to be caged. Power goes out, all destruction. And unless their cage opens on them, they're probably going to be stuck in it.
Wow.
And any survivors, I don't see them going to any prisons. I don't think that's going to be at the top of their list to go in and free prisoners.
No.
So,
but you're going to see a lot of cannibalism.
I think you will too, and I think you'll see a lot of people who will be eating their own pets. You brought up pets earlier. You're going to see a lot of that. And you're going to find pets that are eating their owners too. It's really going to get bad.
People say, "Oh, it's put us back to the 1800s." No, it's going to push us way further back from that.
Oh, we'd be worse off than anybody, because our civilization now on this planet is so dependent upon technology that you take that away. If they can't go down to the Walmart to get their meat and their produce, and people are going to be done. That alone. So there's just so much going against the human race right now. If something like Planet X is to happen, the nuclear power plants, the power being on, you can forget it. You're not going to be turning lights on by a switch for a long time, if ever. Yeah, so it's going to be bad. You look at some of the hot climates and the way the weather, we haven't even factored in how the weather would change on this planet. You might be used to palm trees and oranges where you live now. That might be a whole other ball game once something like this happens.
Well, that's correct. I noticed even the winter here we had last winter was very, very mild. We hardly had any snow at all, and which is unusual. And I've watched the weather too. The weather changing. We had snow in the Caribbean. They've had snow in Mexico. The whole. I believe the Earth's wobbling like the moon is. I think it's tilting a little bit. I know the North Pole itself is moving. It's out in the sea now, heading towards Russia at a rapid rate. So if the Earth does tilt, that's going to create havoc. As regards to the plates, the oceans will get. All the water got ripped out of the oceans completely.
Yeah,
and
you got the weight of the water is dispersed in a certain way. You start moving that, you get more weight different areas of the planet. It's going to change the way the planet sits.
Yeah.
So
but there was one warning they gave us, the USGS did, and that was the possibility, or the imminent earthquake off the coast of like Seattle, on the west coast there. And they reckon if that goes, it's going to create a huge tsunami. And they reckon it's ready to go at any time. but what I was curious about was uh, last year at Yellowstone they closed one of the favorite um, trails they have through Yellowstone at high season, saying it was down for maintenance. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's kind of a weird time to do that when it's high season. But I
Yeah.
wonder what's going on out there as regards to Yellowstone, because there's a huge amount of magma there, and did that let go, that would devastate the U.S.
Well, yeah, there's that one, and there's a few others they say that would be absolutely devastating if they went off. But Yellowstone, I remember not too long ago, the roads were melting. Now, I don't know as though if that's anything normal, but from what I understand, that's not normal. But I mean,
Mm,
I don't think it would be. Why would you put roads where they're going to constantly melt? So, I mean, these roads were literally melting. They were bubbling, boiling.
yeah. Well, I mean, when you look at the amount of volcanoes that are going off now, I mean, 20, 30 years ago, if a volcano went off, it would be massive news all over.
Yeah.
Now they're going off, they're not even a mention hardly. We've got 40 of them on the Ring of Fire that are actually erupting. So why is that not on hitting the mainstream news? It's almost like there's a gag order on the media. Let's just concentrate on the primaries, and let's not report the rest of the stuff. Unless there's a bit of terrorism, we'll throw that in. But we're just going to concentrate on Hillary and Donald. And
I
not
tell
tell the
you,
people.
I've thought about this now. There is this scenario that goes off in my head. Is I was just telling the kids tonight too. This is probably going to be the greatest presidential election, the run that they've ever witnessed in their lifetime. And I'm thinking, I was like, there's a part of me that wonders sometimes, why not throw these two? Oh boy, what attention they've taken, and maybe there's something bigger happening that people are missing, including myself. And I've thought about that. However, I'm a Donald Trump supporter. I'll say that, but I don't, I don't hide from the fact that this could be all diversion.
Well, I mean, when I watch CNN, I think to myself, how they could possibly talk about that same person for months every day and have a panel on there, and all the experts on there. Well, they've all the. If you go back and listen to what they'd said months and months ago, that Donald wouldn't even be in the running. They've all been proven wrong to so-called experts. So.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think this is like the smoke and mirrors, just to keep people's attention away from what's really, really going on, and I believe that. I believe there is something a lot bigger, like Planet X, and the effects of that, and it's coming. And I mean, a lot of people have written that Obama's the last president.
Well, and I think about it too, and folks, it's not that I'm giving up here or anything, but I'm simply saying that with you look through the process through the years, you've had Kennedy, he got in there, he was doing all right, they shot him. And it seems like Reagan, he tried to do well and did pretty well, but they shot him even too. And so it seems like it's been amazing to me how Ron Paul too. I mean, he was the only other candidate I ever really went goo goo over, and and he didn't make it. They didn't let him in, and I'm thinking, why Donald? Why is he so successful when he's so much different than the rest of them? And so I have thought about that, but I look at it that he has pulled off a brilliant campaign. He has, but that being said, you never know. They could say, hey, this is perfect. Let them go. People will focus on that. And, meanwhile, we'll sneak off and head to Mars or the moon or wherever. I mean, that's always a possibility, I guess.
I think, well, yeah, I really think it's like what we're watching is like a reality show. And I think basically what it is, they go out there and say, Donald, just go wild. Say whatever you want. Because it gets everybody's attention, right? So it's always a sort of like, you by the coffee machine, it's gossip around there. So everybody's focusing on that and not really realizing. I mean, let's face it, the Illuminati's done a great job in snowing as to guys what's really going on.
Well, yeah, they have, and at this point, we've seen that this, I call them the New World Order. I guess people have different ways of describing them, but it's like the Bilderberg thing. I mean, here it is in the news every year. You know, oh, the Bilderbergs. Who the hell cares about the Bilderbergs and where they're going to meet? Because, you know, I think if it was really something they didn't want us to pay attention to, they'd make sure we didn't know about it. So I don't know. It seems like sometimes I wonder if that's a diversion too. It's like you think those are the people making this decision and that decision when really they're underneath the ground right now in their offices. They're probably making these decisions, you know?
Well, sure. You know, it's like what I wrote in one article there again on Planet X News was about, you know, that they'll be sitting in their underground bunkers in nice lazy boy chairs with a beer and the popcorn watching the all the video cameras they've managed to get installed throughout the major cities of the world.
Oh,
and
no
watching
kidding.
watching the reality show for real. You know, see what's going on.
No kidding. You know, that's a good point. The cameras, there's over, I think, what did I read? Was it 225 million, I thought it was, cameras around the world?
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they'll be watching us out there, you know.
That's a lot of channels.
Yeah, slaughtering each other because they want to be able to reduce the population down to 500 million people, so I hear.
Yeah, and why not record history that way, right?
Yeah, I mean, people got to remember too that all the information, you know, that I'm talking about anyway, and probably yourself is like everything that we learn from others, and it can only be as valid as the source. I know that some people have put some deeds and stuff on the web, you know, but they're only going by the insider information that they receive. Right. So if they happen to be wrong, it's not necessarily their fault.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So someone makes a prediction and it doesn't come true, then you know, because they've had that information given to them, then you can't really blame that person either because they're doing it in good faith.
Right. And, you know, and I hear people all the time. I listen to some of these big shows, and you got people, well, my special inside sources tell me this and that. And, you know, I don't know. A lot of these people are before it's news researchers, and they're just out there to, like I say, to fill their pockets. And so I try to weed through those people because I have a big interest in these things, but I'm not gullible. You know, for me, I've always want proof. Sometimes people get mad at me because they say, well, you know, what are you doing to prepare for Planet X? And I say, well, you know, if God wants me to do something, then, you know, I'll get my sign. I mean, I'll just know when it's time to go. I'm about 2 hours from the coast right now. I'm in South Carolina. And we had the historic floods here not long ago.
Yes.
And I'd never seen anything like that in my life. I'm originally from New York. Moved here in '08, and that's the first time I've seen something like that. Seeing entire roads caving in from water, just seeing entire neighborhoods underwater. It was just incredible.
I know it's amazing. In fact, you know what? Like we've just had in Ottawa, which is our capital there, we've just had the sinkhole appear. Oh. So if you Google that, you know, Ottawa sinkhole, you'll see that we've had one, and it's like, where did that come from? You know, and a lot of people say, oh, it's all due to fracking and, you know, it's all due to this, that, and the other. No, it's got to do with the Earth's changing. And, you know, I believe it's going to cleanse itself one way or the other.
And that's something I wonder, and we got a break coming up, so I'll probably hold it for after the break, maybe discussion on this. But where I want to go after this break is how do we know how can we be sure what is maybe the results of a big body of something out in space that's affecting us, and based on or versus the technology that the military industrial complex has and uses, such as weather modifications and things. So maybe we can hit that a little bit on that when we come back. And so hang on with me for a moment. We'll go ahead and talk, and let's see how it sounds.
there's been a lot of interference on the internet lately, and regarding all the scenarios that are coming into play. And then when I published the book last Friday, and people are coming to me like wildfire. In fact, one of them is somebody that introduced me to my introduction to get into the disclosure part, and tell my story. Well, I came across a guy who has been following Planet X since Sitchin invented it. He was inside DARPA. I can't disclose the name yet. And he told me some very interesting things over the weekend when the rapid sales and interest in my book came about. And he told me straight up that until some other person died, he couldn't say anything. Well, he did. And he's the only person that knows what he knows, and he's got some proof to do it. He flat out told me the Nibiru system is 700 or so years from getting any problems with the planet Earth tilt theories.
But now you said since Stitchin invented it, just for the record, Stitchin didn't invent Planet X. He actually, his thing was the Nibiru, and I mean it's the same really, but I mean I think this came along even well before him, didn't it?
Right. Well, I'm going to be a little passive here because I have had other people come out towards me just recently and sent me their online video of his determination of the chemtrails and the alleged UFOs and all these other things. And when I watched it, and this is just going to be astounding what I'm fixing to say.
Okay.
I watched all 2.5 hours, and me trying to respond to everybody buying the book and all that too at the same time. He accidentally crossed, and being a video editor, he used two certain filters, like the guy that came on the other night somewhere about they had this thing they could actually see what's in the skies.
Yeah.
Well, he started beginning to see things in all of the videos, and he put them together. It's been since 2012. I'm surprised I never crossed paths with this guy. But what he said, it's the YouTube video that's called "What Is in Our Sky." I mean, it's obvious. Big question. Well, when he broke it down, acquired some very interesting, detailed documentations of the X-17 or the 71, I forgot which one it was, but when he analyzed all this information and put it in his comments, it hit me right upside the head. Oh my God, it's in my book. And it's also in the air of the chemtrails. It's the nanobot technology. Well, they have certain cloud formation. People think it's all this, it's all this whatever. It's our own military that are making these things. Believe in them because it's a hologram technology, super hologram technology. The metals in the air and the ships they use are invisible, and they have multiple attached, and they're drones. Thousands in that. In fact, there's 30,000 plus mama ships that detach from under. It's like an aircraft carrier. And I'm gonna be doggone if I didn't catch one on video at sundown today. Had the exact same features that he's showing everybody, and it just blew me right out of the water. And you can go look at it on my Facebook page to tell everybody, yeah, Ben's right. Well, I don't want to be the one to pop everybody's bubble about Nibiru, but
I do want to look at it. I'm going to bring it up here.
I'm going to text it to you. Hang on, just a sec. I don't want the server to go down yet.
Okay,
Right.
and let's get Dave's opinion. David, what do you think about this? Nanobot tech.
I'll tell you now, if Nibiru never comes, I'll be the happiest man on this planet.
Right.
But myself, I believe there's so many changes going on, whether it's Nibiru or not. If a catastrophe hits, the results are going to be the same. It could be Nibiru, it could be a meteor, it could be anything. So I certainly believe there's something out there that's coming our way. There's been so many pictures that have been sent to me, and they're not all lens flares. There's something out there.
I'm fixing to tell you what those.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm fixing to tell you what it is. It's the super hologram program that the United States Air Force has and has been using since they started doing this. It's to generate mass chaos and fears in individual, like the religions. They're gonna, and it's been talked about all over the internet, a fake alien invasion, or a fake religious thing, or now the Nibiru crap. So what they're doing is they're generating through the internet and all the social networks the fear factors of making everybody believe. Like, I mean, you see it on television. Everybody's going to be a zombie, and here you go with Trump and all their issues. Oh, I'm going to build a wall. And, there's so much collusion about nonsense that nobody really sees what's going on. It's because some guy found accidentally and remade the videos that we have invisible aircraft that hover
now
and are spreading. I watched it myself today. I watched the cloud come out of nowhere.
Well, I'm watching the video now, and so I guess then it's an invisible spacecraft, so then I shouldn't expect to see it, because so far all I see is clouds. I'm not trying to be sarcastic.
Well, I want you to go. He's got 19. I mean, I'm not going to try to make y'all do this time. Just everybody view it. It's the one that's labeled holograms. But to understand what he's talking about at that point in his presentation, you got to watch all of it, and how he accidentally crossed. I mean, it's man-made. It's American-made.
I wonder what the end goal is.
But here's who really knows what it's for? Well, I figured it out today when I saw it myself, and a chemtrail feeds it once they start generating these clouds, and then sometimes you see a chemtrail, and I know everybody watches them, there's like a dark spot in them. That's the bent light, the technology they have on the skin of the ships that makes it look like. Well, who was the guy that made the Statue of Liberty disappear? Remember that?
I know what you're talking about.
David Copperfield. They put cameras in a 360 circle, and the technology is so minute they can zero in and read your name on your tag from 150 miles up. So if you imagine having so many tiny of these 360 around the Statue of Liberty, right? And they're taking a picture of the city, the ocean, the stars, and they reverse it back into the television, onto the actual thing, so it just disappears. No matter what angle you go, it's kind of like the Matrix thing when they slowed the movie down and you can see all the bullets going through. Well, what they're doing is they're creating a television screen in the atmosphere, and when they've got it fully saturated, because they're continually to add all this stuff, they're going to project what you see and hear on the internet, on television, and there's your doomsday.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll look at these videos. I watched a couple of them on your Facebook page just now while you were talking.
But the one I uploaded today, and you're going to see it. It's in the exact same cloud formation, and me talking, going, oh, I don't believe I just saw that. Really. So enjoy it. I don't want to steal the show, and I know you and I got one coming up, and it's going to be fun.
All right. Thanks for the call, Ben. I appreciate it.
Hello.
Good evening, Dave. This is Michael Vera with Late Night in the Midlands. How are you?
Good evening, Michael. I'm fantastic. How are you?
I am doing just fine, and it's great to talk to you tonight. And I do thank you so much for taking time out to be with us.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure, for sure.
All right. Well, we've got an interesting topic here tonight, and I have been all over the Planet X News website. And I tell you, I find a lot of interesting stuff there. I'm going to be spending a little more time there. It's full of goodies. So I thought maybe we'd start out with a little bit of background and I mean, most people probably don't believe when they hear about something like this. So what got you going down this Planet X trail?
Well, I'll tell you the story. I work in the nuclear business, and I was up at a nuclear plant working, and there was a colleague of mine that mentioned the fact about this Planet X. And I've always been interested in, science and the stars and UFOs and all that sort of stuff. So I kind of tweaked my interest, but I really didn't pay a lot of attention to it in the beginning. And then one day I thought, oh, well, I'll check it out on the web and stuff. And I went around. There was lots of information on this Planet X. And when I got to Planet X News, I kind of liked that site, and I started to read the stuff. And I'll be honest with you, Michael, I was a skeptic. I did not believe that there could be this rogue planet with a bunch of others with it coming into our solar system, and I just didn't believe it. It took me, I think, it still got my curiosity though, and I think it took me 2 years before I'd even believe it. That's
Wow.
how long it took me for researching this stuff, listening to people, find out who was credible, who was not. It took at least that long to find out, who was credible and who was giving out some good information that I could believe.
Right, and that's the key. Who's credible? That's been my experience. I've been doing this for 8.5 years, and I have had several guests on about Planet X. Some of them have now retired and they're not around no more, but a good majority of them, I don't have back on because I've found where they have been. They're just in it to fill their pockets, and they're taking advantage of people. And
You know what? And I agree with you 100%. And when I started to write my articles, and I got started with Planet X News because I was retired, but since gone back to work because of Planet X actually, and I'll explain that a little bit later. But when Planet X News was advertising for writers, I thought maybe I could write, one or two, and I contacted, Brad, and I said, I might be able to write one or two. He said, okay. He said, that's fine. So it started off as a guest writer, and when I started to write, I couldn't stop. I was probably writing 2 to 3 articles a week.
nice.
And if you look in the archives of the stuff that I've written, you'll see that if you can find the dates on them, you'll probably see that that's quite true. But the information that I gathered was incredible. But what I wanted to do was, I'm just an ordinary fellow, and in a certain way. But I think she's like most people. They don't really want to know, don't want to believe that it's true. And I think there's a lot of people out there that think the same way. This couldn't possibly happen. We've got nice blue skies and all this sort of stuff. But when I looked at all the evidence of the changes, not only on our planet, but all the other planets in our solar system, that's a matter of record with NASA, the weather on Venus and all these other planets has gone absolutely haywire. And that just doesn't happen. Something has to cause that to happen.
Yeah, and there's always excuses for this stuff. I mean, I've had some say, "Oh, well, that didn't really happen. People are making that up." But I know for a fact that these other planets have been affected temperature-wise.
Oh, yeah, they have actually violent storms on these planets now, which they never had before. And the rings of Saturn, I guess some of the rings have disappeared, and all sorts of stuff is going on, and I think the increase too in meteors, even though NASA said, oh, we can track those, they certainly missed the one coming over Russia, and the excuse was it came out from the sun. But I mean, there's been one, I think, in Iraq that really wasn't publicized, and there's been several others too, and the increase has been absolutely dramatic.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Yeah, the same with earthquakes. I started to monitor the earthquakes and also sinkholes, as well as extreme weathers like floods. I mean, this is unprecedented, those things that are going on.
And David, if I may, you mentioned earthquakes, and I got to say, I've had Dr. Rand, who is on this, he does a show here, and Peter Kling, they do a show together. Them two have been talking about the earthquakes, and I knew that it picked up, right? But I didn't know. I finally listened to them guys, and I went ahead and I signed up at the USGS website and started getting these earthquakes sent to me, and I want everything that's 5 or more. And I'll tell you what, in the last week I've had, I think, 4 or 5 that were well over 6 that have come to me. I mean, that's a lot.
I know. And I watched the program when I first started to investigate this. Do you remember the program with Jesse Ventura, Conspiracy Theories?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
I watched that, and I found that extremely interesting. And they brought up the thing about the underground bunkers that the U.S. had built. And when I realized and dug in deeper and find out more about them and discovered they built over 130 of them, mainly, I think they're all actually sort of inland, away from the coast, and they're all interconnected by highway 1.5 miles down. And I'm thinking, well, why would they? I mean, if you want to have a nuclear shelter, why would you want to connect them, sort of by road? So there must be another alternative reason for the road. And I think it's a great way to disperse and transport, troops without anybody's knowledge.
That makes sense to me. And yeah, I know I've seen photos, and I'm not somebody who takes every photograph to be. For me, I've got to trust who I'm getting it from and know that they didn't Photoshop or what have you. And I've seen pictures of what seems to be farms underneath the ground, where they've literally got farms, artificial sunlight down there that they're growing stuff with. I've seen the roads, almost like stores built down there. It's insane what they have.
Well, exactly. I mean, I know there's a lot of people out there like myself. They don't have a degree in science. They're not astronomers. They know very little about that stuff at all. But I think they know that they've been lied to or being lied to. And what I wanted to do was sort of, hope they don't object, but try to represent them as an ordinary citizen, so to speak, to try and gather all the information I can and put it on that website.
And I appreciate that, and that's what I want, really, and that's what I set out looking for when I sent out an email. And got you here is I was looking for. First off, I wanted somebody everybody hasn't plastered all over the place, already. And I don't know, honestly. I mean, until I found you, I find that you've been in this and you've been doing this a while, but you and I haven't crossed paths yet. So that was important, and also important as to how serious you take it. And I'm taking it that you take it pretty serious.
Well, you know what? I'll be honest with you. It is scary, and the people that I've spoken to, and I've spoken now to quite a few people throughout the world, and it really affects their families, them and their families. I was astonished that just how much it does affect people. It affects their marriage, their relationships, all this sort of stuff. Because I have one partner that really believes and wants to prep and protect his family, and then you have maybe the wife, not all in every case, but maybe the wife that thinks the husband's going absolutely crazy.
Yeah. I know of a few people like that where they split up because they couldn't agree.
Yeah, and I mean, my wife, God bless her, She doesn't object to me doing this. She supports me, and